Welcome back, everyone. This is Dave from Corn Productions, my co-host Stacie, here to talk about the original Quantum Leap, Season 4, Episode 6. Cannot tell you the title. The episode's description reads as follows. Sam leaps into a Me-Too victim and must testify against the attacker who is an outstanding member of the community. All right, so before I go any further, I mean, we've already kind of hinted at this, but disclaimer time once again. The episode's title and the subject matter is unfortunately something that goes against YouTube's community standards. I didn't explain this well last week, but I'll try to do a better job. Basically, Mimi Gallup asked me, well, what does the algorithm have to do with what you have to say? And really, the algorithm is not really the main problem, though it certainly is part of it.
Right.
Basically, YouTube wants their content to be advertiser-friendly, and the subject matter in this episode definitely is not. Now, if you get into subjects that is against YouTube's community standards, one, the video might just be not monetized, but there's also other potential problems. One, the video could just be straight up taken down, or in worst case scenario, they could just take away your entire channel.
Right.
I don't think they'll go that far.
I don't think they would,
right.
But we just,
right.
We don't want to upset the algorithm.
Right.
And I've said that before, but basically, and the algorithm just means like the AI that monitors what's happening on YouTube, right? And if they don't like what we're talking about, that being the computer algorithm that's not a person monitoring it to see what we're actually discussing, might think that we're, talking in favor of some of these topics.
Right.
And if they think that because we're using certain words repetitively, which we would if we were saying the title of the episode, because we would be saying that a lot if we were doing that. It might be like, oh, I don't think we should send people to this channel.
Right.
So not only wouldn't the video be discoverable, they could end up basically hiding our entire channel where people can't find us and won't hear our other content, which we wouldn't be recording if we didn't want you to find it.
Right.
So, in order to stay discoverable,
as much as I enjoy, just talking to you, I would like to involve some other people in this discussion for sure.
Right.
But yes, so that is why we have to be cautious when talking about this episode.
Yeah.
And one of the reasons why I was not looking forward to talking about this episode as far back as, like last season, when we were talking about episodes last season, I knew this episode was coming.
Yeah.
And I was concerned about it.
Now, as far as subject matter, I think this is a little bit less algorithm sensitive than Justice.
Perhaps. I'm not totally convinced of that, though.
Because I feel like this is a topic that more people talk about against than the topic of justice.
Right.
Where I feel like anybody talking about that topic is going to be looked at as like, oh, you're providing propaganda for that organization.
Right. Yeah. But this
is more relatable. This is more of kind of a real thing, like a real prevalent thing in society. It is sensitive subject matter, though. There's trigger warnings here to talk about, and in this episode, I mean, I'm going to go ahead and get into my thoughts on this episode.
All right.
Because
should I do the rest of my spiel before we do that? Or...
Go ahead.
Okay.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
All right. So, the episode was written by Beverly Bridges. She last wrote the previous episode, Permanent Wave. Her last effort on the series will be this season's Plays the Thing. And crucially, I should also point out that she was responsible for The Great Spontini. That is an important point to bring up because I have similar problems with this episode that I had that episode.
Okay.
And I'll get into that in a little bit later. But the episode was directed by Michael Zimberg, who also directed the season premiere of the season. The episode takes place on June 20th, 1980, and originally aired on October 16th, 1991. 1980 means this was out of my lifetime. But it was pretty close to within my lifetime.
Pretty close.
Actually, no, I don't think I even exist at this point. Not even in my mom's belly or anything like that. Before we go any further, I'll tell you a couple of things. One, this is not a spoiler-free podcast, so if you haven't watched the episode, I highly recommend you go and check it out and then come back and give us a listen. Secondly, if you're listening to one of the platforms that this podcast is now available on, please follow and feel free to check out my YouTube channel, Corn Productions, where additional content can be discoverable, quantum leap related and otherwise. If you're already on my YouTube channel, please like, share, and comment, as well as subscribing to our channel. All right, so before I get into the shouts, I'll let you do your thing. Say what you want to say.
Okay, so my thoughts on the episode as an episode. There's a lot of great stuff here. There's a lot of...
I agree.
There's a lot of things such as, what we're doing with the imaging chamber and bringing Katie in. And I like all of that. I like that we're exploring the possibilities of Project Quantum Leap a little bit further. And we're doing new things there. I like where Al and Sam have some great discussions in this episode. I'm really uncomfortable with the way this episode resolves.
I am as well. Because it seems like we don't accomplish anything.
So, besides being, talking about the topic of this episode, we're really focusing on, like, the legal system and how it's a failure. And even in the beginning, we're kind of talking about, like, the medical system and how that's kind of a failure. And there's a lot of kind of jabs at how things kind of fail victims, right?
Yes.
And now that's a real thing. It's
and what's
worthy of talking about.
What's really depressing is that I don't think that things have really improved in that regard.
Oh, definitely not. Probably even worse in some regards.
I would say that there was some more attention brought to this issue, and the whole idea of believing victims, the Me Too movement.
Right.
I don't know that actually improved the system at all. Like, I think, we got some high-profile people caught up in that, went to jail. Harvey and Weinstein, for instance. I think Bill Cosby was partly in that situation, swept up in that, in all of his crimes. But the garden variety Joe Schmo, I'm not sure that anything has improved for the average person.
No. So, what I was getting at is, although it is realistic, the message that, hey, the legal system kind of fails people. That's a realistic message. But I just really hate that, like, our resolution in this story is violence is what solved the problem. Meet violence with violence.
Right.
And it's like, oh, that's what he was here to do.
Yeah, that's a problem.
I feel like it's a bad message. And Quantum Leap usually gives really good messages. And I kind of feel like the takeaway from this is to just reinforce the notions that victims shouldn't bother pressing charges.
Yeah.
And that feels really icky to me.
I'm not sure that's what this episode was trying to say.
No, it's not what it was trying to say, but I feel like that's the takeaway.
You think there was an unintentional takeaway?
Yeah. I feel like if you are in Katie's position and you watch this episode, you're left feeling a little more hopeless. I don't feel like it has any positivity. Now,
I see that.
If this was an episode of television made today, it would end with a title screen saying, here's a number to call, here's a hotline, here's legal aid. That's where it would put us, right?
Right.
But we didn't do that in, what year was this, 1991? Are we in?
Yeah. And not only that, but, like, we don't learn anything what happens after this. Like, I mean, I guess maybe we should get into that conversation later, but, yeah, I mean... I feel icky about the resolution. I feel like it needed another step of justice added to it. Mm-hmm.
We needed something more to justify that Sam did something positive here.
Right.
Like, yeah, he helped, but that's what you were here to do?
Right.
Really?
I mean, then why bother with the rest of the stuff that happens in this episode? Why not just skip straight to kicking his butt?
Right.
Like, basically. And I think we'll continue that discussion after. But, so let's get into some shout-outs before going any further.
Okay.
Yes, we're doing this a little bit backwards than we usually do. But, all right, so Ashley Wright. All right, so Ashley responded to your comments regarding whether the gun would fire in the previous episode. Yes, there is a lot of noise. Adam is walking around up there. He's a very restless person. But he actually was responding to the exact opposite issue. And actually, his comments were more something that I had actually brought up when I talked about the Leap Back or the Leap Home Part 2, where Sam dove into the water, and I was questioning whether that would actually shield him from the bullets. And as it turns out, and I'll read this comment here, the issue with shot rounds into the water was also brought up in a video on Saving Private Ryan. In the opening beach scene, people were shot in the water. According to the video on YouTube, it was CGI that showed the rounds moving in the water, but apparently they would have slowed down enough not really to be as effective as featured. Yes, that is absolutely true. I've read a ton of stuff on this, like where the bullets would the water would stop the bullets, or at least severely slow it down and make it significantly less effective. But that was not the issue that you had specifically regarding this last episode.
Right.
Your thoughts were, would a gun taken out of the water and then fired fire?
Right.
And I looked at this question for you. I didn't get any conclusive answers to the question. Really, what it comes down to is it depends. The problem is not the gun itself, but the bullets, the ammunition. If water gets into the casing, the gun will not fire. But if it's sealed tight enough, potentially water would not get into the bullet and the gun could fire.
Okay.
Whether they
so
had...
there is something about that
Yes,
topic. I wasn't
yes.
making it up.
No. No, definitely it is an issue. These days, I guess ammunition is made to be sealed tight enough that water would not get into the bullets. Whether that was the case back in 1983, which is when this episode took place, I don't know.
Right.
But, so the question is inconclusive, really, when it comes down to it.
Okay.
But, so Alpha, in regards to our conversation about this whole leap, whether it was really justified.
Permanent wave, that is.
Right, permanent wave. We're still talking about permanent wave. Basically, we questioned whether, like, this was really the right time and place to leap into, whether we really need to involve this family at all, and why we didn't want to save Phil. So he said, this leap is totally justified, even if Frank's new actions put Kyle and his mom in jeopardy. Kyle and his mom learned Kyle was not so helpless. Bill's murder was solved, but I would argue that the universe could be not be concerned about saving Bill because he was still a corrupt pharmacist, even if he had a change of heart at the end. And let's not forget that Chloe and the crooked cop were stopped in their drug empire ambitions. Okay, that's a fair counterpart to our argument.
Sure.
I would say that, yeah, in any leap, we have the main mission. We have Sam's side quests sometimes where he goes off and does something that's not totally on mission,
right?
At least as far as he's concerned. And then maybe there's some smaller objectives that God, time, or fate wants to achieve,
right?
That we don't really get into, such as, for instance, maybe giving Kyle some more agency than he had before with his mother.
Yeah.
So that's a good point. Also, maybe God, time, or fate looked at Phil's life. Like after, if he were to be saved, he looked into the future, saw everything that Phil was going to do. Maybe he was just going to go and find another criminal enterprise after opting out of this. And maybe God, time, or fate just deemed Phil not worth saving.
Sure.
So
can't save everybody.
Right, exactly. So good point from him. He also points out that Jordan Gordon-Levitt is the single greatest cameo in the entire series. He was a guest starring role. I wouldn't call it a cameo, but still. Only rivaled, in his opinion, by the beautiful Tamlin Tabita in Temptation Eyes. She played Daniel LaRusso's girlfriend in Karate Kid 3. And she was also a Starfleet admiral, and we'll eventually end up talking about that episode. But yeah, he says, incredible actor from someone so young, and yeah, I totally agree. He absolutely killed it in that episode. He definitely demonstrated the talent that he would go on to present in his movie career.
Yeah.
Mimi Gallup thought that he had cerebral palsy, and that was the reason for his leg brace. I don't know that was stated in the episode itself.
It wasn't, but that would be a plausible explanation, although I don't think that would be the only explanation.
Right.
But something similar to that would definitely be what's implied there.
Yes, and I already made reference to her other comment at the top. All right, so any other thoughts before we're getting into this episode?
No, I think we should just jump right into our scene by scene. Again, we are going to be talking a little bit in code just to not say a certain word.
Right.
That we're trying to avoid saying.
So Sam leaps in. He's in a hospital room being examined. The doctor says it's all over. And, okay, I did make note of that. The doctor is played by Michael Griswold. He has 52 credits. Based on his resume, he seems to be a character actor. He appeared in Family Matters and Murder, She Wrote. And do you have anything else for him that you thought it was noteworthy?
He was in 19 episodes of Days of Our Lives, 3 episodes of Newhart, and he was in the movie Starman.
Ah, yes. Okay.
We have a lot of actors in this with lots and lots of credits.
Yeah. So Sam, of course, has no idea what this even means. He quickly deduces that he's a woman, which he is not thrilled with, and he says, "Not again." And the police officer in the scene asks, Is this type of sexual attack happened before? And Sam realizes the gravity of what he's left into, and credits. The Officer Shumway, is played by Eugene Lee. He has 50 credits for him, including recently 3 episodes of Homeland, 2 episodes of NYPD Blue, and an appearance on the original Frasier, not the revival series.
Yep, and he was also in an episode of The Lying Game, which is Pretty Little Liars adjacent. I love that series as well. He played Willie Mays in the O.J. Simpson story.
Interesting. Willie Mays?
Yeah.
Willie Mays was in the O.J. Simpson story?
Yeah.
Willie Mays, the baseball player?
I assumed so.
Oh, okay. That's interesting.
I mean, maybe it's just another character named Willie Mays, but I figure with a sports connection.
Right, yeah.
Had to have been in there somehow.
I didn't realize that Willie Mays had anything to do with O.J. Simpson.
Well, you'll have to go watch the O.J. Simpson story, I guess.
I guess I will. And finally, there's Sam's host sister, Libby. She's played by Amy Ryan, who these days is pretty recognizable. She has 74 acting credits, including movies such as Gone Baby Gone, Birdman, and Before the Devil Knows You're Dead, which is actually a really great film that I personally love.
And she plays Holly on The Office. And what I instantly recognized her from now, watching this, is she's in the first season of Only Murders in the Building.
Oh, okay.
She plays Jan, which I won't give spoilers, but a very important character in that season. And on that note, I have a correction to make for something I've stated before.
Okay.
And that is that, and we haven't gotten to this character yet, but the character that plays Katie's mom, Colleen, Nancy Lanahan, I had previously in other videos said that she plays Katie's sister.
Gotcha, but she actually plays her mother.
The mother, right. So when I had seen that credit, Colleen McBain, I for some reason thought that was the sister. So definitely in that episode of Extended Family, and I feel like somewhere else, I feel like we've talked about this twice before, and I couldn't figure out where.
I'm not sure.
But I have, at least on one occasion, I think on 2, stated that actress plays Katie's sister, but definitely not. Katie's sister is Libby, like you just said, played by Amy Ryan.
Okay. So after the credits, Libby asks what they're going to tell mom and dad, and the doctor suggests honesty, and that it's really important to be honest right now. Libby also reveals that Kevin is the culprit, and already we're seeing some resistance to this idea. Like when the doctor and the nurse are both like, it couldn't possibly be Kevin.
Yeah, and the nurse, by the way, is played by Nora Masterson. She was in 4 episodes of Dallas, an episode of Murder, She Wrote, and an episode of Freddy's Nightmares, which was the Nightmare on Elm Street TV series.
Oh, gotcha. Okay. While leaving the hospital, Shumway talks to Sam and expresses that the fight against Kevin will be quite the fight, and that the DA might not want to take the case, which is why he wants her to talk to the DA in the morning. Before leaving, she is confronted by Kevin, who is, of course, claiming innocence and concern about Katie's well-being. And I guess this is where he mentions that she left his car and got into another stranger's car.
Yeah, so what we know so far about that night is that Katie and Kevin went to Fort Cronkite, and at some point, Katie left Kevin's car, and Kevin is stating that she left him and went into a stranger's car, and he was worried about her. Also, during these couple of scenes, a couple other things that happened. The doctor gave Sam a prescription for Valium.
Yes.
Which he crumpled up and tossed aside because he knows that won't be helpful.
Right.
So, that tiny nod at where our healthcare system has been.
Yes.
And the other thing that happened is the nurse gave Sam a bill for this.
Yeah.
A bill for this examination, and Libby went to pay that bill, and she complains because they charged them $350. I meant to go translate that into modern money, but that's a fair amount of money in 1980.
Right.
And the fact that a patient who has come in to be examined after an assault is getting a very substantial bill for this service to be paid on the way out the door.
Right.
That's the nod right there on how crappy our healthcare system is, because there shouldn't be any charge for this.
Right.
At least not on the day of.
Right.
Like, you want to send a bill in the mail a month later, great. That's, gonna happen in our healthcare system that we have in the States. But the whole way this is handled is like, here's your bill, pay it on the way out the door.
Right.
While you're dealing with this situation. How horrible is that?
Now, this is a fairly well-off family. They don't have insurance. So,
I mean, maybe this is even after insurance.
Jeez, that's quite a bill.
Yeah, right. I mean, it's expensive to go to the hospital.
Right, yeah.
And they're not at a doctor's visit. They're at the emergency room.
Right.
And I feel like this is just another one of those quiet little nods that's like encouraging people not to seek help. Like, oh, you even want to go to the hospital to get checked out? It's going to cost you.
Right. Again, I don't think that's intentional, but I can see where someone might take that message. So Sam goes home to have an uncomfortable conversation with his parents. Colleen, and Katie's mother, is played by, we already talked about this, but some of her other credits, other than Extended Family, which we just mentioned.
Yeah, she plays Rose in Extended Family, which is where we recently have talked about her.
And unfortunately, that series is now been canceled, so we won't be
seeing more of Rose, which makes me sad. I was hoping to see more of her.
She was also in a movie called Night Swim, which is a horror movie that seemed interesting to me. I have yet to watch it.
Was she in Night Swim? I didn't catch that when I was doing this. I did see Night Swim. I was disappointed with it.
Did you?
It started off kind of strong, and I was like, yeah, this could be good. And then I was disappointed with where it went. But check it out and make your own opinion on it.
All right.
It's watchable, I guess.
Watchable? Well, that's a high endorsement if I ever heard of one. All right, and she was also in Catch Me If You Can.
Yes, I love that movie.
Yes, me too.
She was in 2 episodes of How I Met Your Mother. She was in 6 episodes of The New Adventures of Old Christine. She was in an episode of Freaky Links, which I think I brought that up when we talked about her before.
Yep.
Being the show that, what's her name?
Jessie Targum.
Jessie Targum, who is
daughter of
Tommy Thompson's daughter, was involved in that series, and she had told us to check it out, but we can't find it.
Right, yeah, it's not streaming anywhere. So her father, Jim, is played by Arthur Rosenberg. He has 90 credits, including his last appearance, which was on Jag.
As well as an episode of X-Files was on this.
Oh, I missed that? Okay. And he starts interrogating Katie. He basically, like, did you defend yourself? Did you try to stop him?
Yeah, he's basically blaming Sam, saying that Katie should have tried harder to get away.
But I think he realizes that he's wrong here.
Yeah, but that's his initial reaction.
Right.
That's without thinking. That's what came out of his mouth is, didn't you try to get away?
Right. And basically, see, men, in a lot of ways were people of action. So he right now is trying to look to do something, and this is not the way to go about it. But yeah, that's the kind of impulse he's coming from.
When Libby tells him, because he's like, well, where was Kevin when this happened to you? And Libby says it was Kevin.
Right.
And he's like, I'm gonna go kill him.
Right. Yeah. But yeah, and it's funny, after this scene, he will be one of the few supportive characters from this family, because the rest of them not so much.
The family kind of is wishy-washy throughout the episode. Like, they're going back and forth a little bit on, oh, let's put this be past us, and oh, let's prosecute.
Right.
Katie's mom is like, let's get her up to bed, go take a shower, and we'll deal with this tomorrow.
Right. Meanwhile, Libby suggests not going to the police and not pressing charges, or going to the police and telling them that not to press charges.
Right, because we've already talked to the police. But yeah, Libby's trying to talk Sam out of pressing charges.
Basically expressing disbelief in her, because she was always such a tease, plus Kevin is a hero, nobody's going to believe her, so on and so forth. Al appears 9 minutes and 40 seconds into the episode. Sam says he's tired and gets rid of Libby that way. And
this is also where we first learn that Kevin is dating a woman named Paula Fletch. And they've been dating for 2 years.
And Katie in the waiting room is not in a good state at all.
She's unresponsive. And so Sam tells Al what happened to Katie, because they don't even know that much yet. And he also tells Al about Kevin. Al looks up Kevin, says he was never charged in this incident. What happens in Kevin's life is he gets married once, gets divorced. His wife charges him with emotional abuse, but that doesn't happen for about 10 years from now. But Al says that doesn't necessarily mean much because, he's been through plenty of divorces, and he says he's been charged with abuse before.
Right.
His third wife charged him with abuse for singing in his sleep.
And specifically, Volare is the song he's singing, and that's a nice little nod to Double Identity.
Right, we get this call back to Double Identity where Al starts reciting the lyrics to Volare.
Ziggy says if he gets Kevin charged, he will probably leap. And Sam latches onto that probably, and like, what do you mean I'll probably leap? I can't be a part of this trial.
Right. Ziggy says there's an 89% chance that that's going to do it. And you know what? Those are pretty good odds coming from Ziggy.
Yes, I would
in
say
this
so.
series, anyway.
Yeah.
Ziggy's never 100% in this series.
Right. Sam and Shumway meet at the DA's office the next morning. Nancy Hudson is played by Penny Pazer. She's got 54 credits for her. Lots of one-off guest starring roles, but she was a regular on a show called Crazy Like a Fox. She also appeared on The Orville and Shameless.
And she was in 18 episodes of Knots Landing. I noticed we have a lot of soap stars in this episode. And she was in an episode of MacGyver.
Ah, yes. Nancy doesn't want to take the case because the person is someone that Katie knows. And there's other reasons, but she will think about doing it. She doesn't decide.
Yeah, basically she's not interested in taking a case that she doesn't think she can win. And she doesn't think that she can win a case because Katie was on a date when this happened. And especially at this point in time, we're at a place where that's dismissive. Right.
I would say that attitudes are different nowadays. The issues of consent are more talked about.
Right.
And more accepted.
Right.
Than what is presented here.
Here we are. This is the DA. This is the person that's most supposed to be on Katie's side. And she's pretty much like, nah, I don't think you should go for it.
Right.
You should just let this go.
Okay, so Katie's family is at dinner. There's a news article trashing Katie. There isn't a lot of goodwill within town. They want her to drop the charges, but Sam won't do it. Sam goes to the bathroom and is accosted by friends of Kevin, who thinks he's only doing the whole charging Kevin thing to get back at him for being engaged to another woman.
Right. So there's the side of the story that they heard was that Kevin told Katie that he's engaged to Paula. Katie kind of went off and was upset about that. And basically, she is now making this whole thing up just to get back at Kevin. And these friends would be Glenn and Randy. Glenn is played by Eric Bruscoder, who is in 2 other episodes of Quantum Leap. He played Bo in Memphis Melody.
Okay.
And he played Red in Liberation.
Oh, all right.
And he was also in an episode of Jag, and he was in the movie Starship Troopers.
Oh, okay.
Randy is played by Pat O'Neill. And the only other credit besides this one is he was in A Nightmare on Elm Street Part 4 as Student.
Ah, so his career went far, very clearly. Okay, so basically they're expressing that the town does not believe him. Al plays devil's advocate, suggesting that events might not have happened, but that she was, in fact, still the victim, but not by Kevin's hand. Basically Al is saying, like, maybe someone else was responsible.
Yeah, so he puts up this whole story, like, oh, maybe, Kevin's telling the truth. She got out of Kevin's car because she was upset about Paula, got into a stranger's car, and the stranger is who did it. Because, remember, Katie's not saying anything. We haven't heard from Katie yet. Libby's the only person who's blaming Kevin that we know of so far. But Ziggy says there's a 47% chance that somebody else did it. But Sam is very convinced. He feels in his heart that it was Kevin. I'm not sure why he would have those strong feelings. Maybe he is pulling something in from Katie?
Possibly. Yeah, I'm not really sure. Nancy expresses disbelief the next morning, or whenever this is.
After lunch. So she said she'd meet up with him after lunch.
Yeah, so she's expressing disbelief in Katie's story, lays out the pluses and negatives of the case. Al flip-flops within the scene, like, twice. He's basically like, I don't really like this woman. And then, like, 2 lines later, I'm starting to like this girl.
Yeah.
Like,
well, basically, Nancy's whole argument is that she doesn't want to take cases where she can't get a conviction because it makes it harder to win cases in the future. And every time you lose a case, of this type,
magnitude,
it's going to make it harder and harder to prove your point in the future.
That's not necessarily totally an unreasonable position.
Right. And it just shows, like, even within the legal system, how everybody knows the legal system is a failure.
Yeah, and I'm sure that the people within the system itself know exactly what's wrong with the system, if they even care.
Yeah.
Like, in some cases.
And during this whole, well, I think the last scene, not specifically the scene, but when Nancy gets the file and, you know, she throws the file on her desk that's got, like, a mountain 3 feet tall of files sitting on it.
Mm-hmm.
It gave me such shades of Ben Song for the Defense.
Yes.
When we're dealing with, like, just how overworked our legal system is.
And this is back, you know, in the 1980s, in a television show produced in the 90s.
Right.
The situation, even worse today, I think. But
I mean, those are two opposite sides. You know, this
right.
is the DA that was dealing with the public defender, but in both, they both have the same caseloads, though.
Right, exactly. So the McBain family, meanwhile, is being ostracized and threatened. Jim is now on her side, whereas her mother is not really up for the fight. Jim says she doesn't have the McBain blood that, prepares them to fight, basically.
Yeah, and they'd received a phone call that afternoon. The church doesn't want Katie to teach Sunday school anymore. Basically, Katie's getting all the blame, like she did something wrong.
Right.
And nobody believes her about what really happened.
Right. So Al brings up that Paula and Kevin had a fight, and that there's a 90% chance Sam has to testify. So now we've gone from 89% chance, you get this charge, and
right.
You
So as soon as Nancy agreed to take the case, they thought, oh, that's it, we're gonna leave now because we did it. We're pressing charges, like the case is going forward. But when he didn't leave, now suddenly they know, oh wait, that wasn't it.
Right. Yeah. Sam says that he has to get her to tell him what happened. And Al is looking for records, basically talking to the therapist, where she might have talked to a therapist about the situation.
Yeah, and so he says he's going to go get those records opened up. That feels like that would be a harder thing to access.
Especially for a person who's probably still alive.
Right.
Yeah.
And you know what? I felt like it was one of these things where I'm confusing episodes, where I thought there was a reference in this, but then I realized after watching this that it actually was 8.5 months I was thinking of.
Okay.
Where there was like, go find that person today.
Right. Yeah.
And that didn't happen here, but it would have fit here. Go find this person today and ask them.
Right.
Ask them their story.
This is 1980.
Yeah.
So this person is still reasonably young.
Right.
In the future.
Yeah.
So Kevin ends up paying a visit to Katie, bringing gifts, and she gets a cool reception from Sam, who still continues to assert his innocence.
He brought her gold jewelry and is like basically trying to talk her out of pressing charges. Right. Really kind of scummy and ridiculous thing to do. And this whole thing should have been brought up in the trial, that he's even trying these tactics.
Okay, so here's where I have an issue similar to the Great Spontini.
Okay.
In that episode, we brought up that the legal system does not move this fast.
Right.
Realistically speaking, Sam should have to be here for like months to a year.
At least weeks.
Yeah.
But he's here for like 2 days.
Right.
Yeah, and it's like, we're going to trial tomorrow.
Yeah, and that's not how it works.
Right.
Like, you get a court date months in advance.
Yeah.
The trial itself could take months to years, and so on and so forth.
Right.
But yeah, and that's the problem that this episode shares with the Great Spontini, which in that case, that was talking about child custody. So, and this is, something that's even more serious. I mean, I wouldn't say it's not the same.
Well, this is a criminal case.
Right, yeah,
versus
exactly.
That was a civil case.
Right. So this would take even longer than what a child custody case should take.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that's a similar issue that I have with both episodes. So during the court hearing, Nancy questions Paula, and she basically ends up sticking up for Kevin.
And Paula, give me a second. I have a long list of people. Oh, we didn't even get Kevin. Let me tell you who plays Kevin.
Oh, yeah, okay. Kevin's
played by Matthew Sheehan. He only has 3 acting credits. This one, he was in an episode of Sequest 2032. And I didn't write what the 3rd credit was. But more recently, he's working in Transportation. And has done a lot of recent movies. He's working in transportation in Hollywood.
Interesting.
So he gave up on acting, apparently.
Yeah, but he's basically, a driver now?
Yeah. Who am I looking for? There we go. Paula. Paula is played by Liz Vassy.
Yes.
We see her again in season 5's Goodbye Norma Jean. She plays Barbara Whitmore.
Yes.
Very important character in that episode. Additionally, she was in 2 episodes of A Million Little Things. I love that show. Yeah. She was in The Tick, 2 different series of The Tick. 4 episodes of one series and 9 episodes of a different series. She was in 4 episodes of 2.5 Men. 1 episode of Early Edition, which I did start watching, by the way.
Oh, where did you watch it?
I'll tell you later.
Okay.
It's not available anywhere, but I found it.
Oh, you're pirating it, basically?
Not exactly, but okay. I'm not going to share my sources.
Okay.
And she was in an episode of Star Trek Next Generation as well.
Yes, that's right. So the defense is basically putting on a very disgusting line of questioning. Basically, he's like, well, look at you. You're very attractive. Why would he do this to this girl over here?
He basically was saying it would be absurd for Kevin to be interested in Katie.
Right. So Kevin is called to the stand and claims him asking Katie on a date was to make Paula jealous. And Kevin also says that what happened afterwards was consensual, but he also said he didn't want to see her again, which caused her to get angry.
Right. He's admitting that something happened between them that night.
Right.
But he's saying it was not assault.
And he also brings up that they had carnal relations before, and this is a moment that hurts Katie's case and really pisses off Nancy.
Right. He says that something happened after both their first and second dates. Now, the night in question was their 3rd date. The courtroom, of course, goes wild at this thought. Like,
right.
Who could believe that, right?
Yeah.
Nancy gets upset and asks Sam if it's true. Of course, he has no idea.
He can't answer the question.
He can't answer the question. Al says there's nothing in Katie's therapy records about that. We'll learn later that that's absolutely not true based on, what Katie's actual testimony ends up being.
Right.
But yeah, Sam can't deny it because he doesn't know.
Right. And that makes him look bad.
It makes everybody look really bad. And the end result is Nancy's kind of like, that's not relevant. But I mean, it kind of is a little bit.
It is.
It changes the scope of the conversation about what happened that night.
Okay, fair enough. But at the same time, like this day and age, it is.
It wouldn't affect guilt or innocence,
right?
But it does affect like our conversations about what was their relationship in that moment.
Gotcha.
What
at the same time, just because you have consent one time doesn't mean you have consent another time, which is a concept that's more.
Their argument is. He thought he had consent, and she didn't say no.
Okay.
She's just changing her mind now. That's their argument.
Gotcha.
Is she never expressed no.
Gotcha. And
he had no reason to think that she wasn't
down for it.
Right.
Gotcha.
And, if their whole argument was, it was no the whole time, learning this makes it look like you're lying.
Right. Yeah. Right. That makes sense.
And, I mean, obviously, that could be the case. It could be no right now.
Right.
And this could still be a very illegal act.
Yes.
But, especially, like, back then, like, with the views people had, it's just really hurting their case.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's really hurting their case, and that's why Nancy's so upset. Like, why didn't you tell me this? Because it would have changed her approach on how they are presenting the case.
Right, absolutely. So Sam is called to testify, but at the suggestion from Al, he takes a dive. He basically pretends to faint as a means to stall.
Yeah. So it's actually a really funny moment. Like he's being sworn in, and then he just like whoop down on the ground.
The humor in this episode is far and few between. There's that like one scene with Al and the Bolare thing, and there's this moment here. But yeah. At home, his mother offers milk and cookies for lack of any better ideas as to what to do to make the situation better. She admits to being confused by this entire situation. Sam suggests getting... Oh, okay, so Sam ends up talking to Al and suggests getting Katie into the imaging chamber and wants him to figure out a way to get him to hear her. Unlike what they did in Shock Theater when he could see Dr. Beeks but couldn't actually hear her.
So they know how to do that much. All they have to do is bring her in, and Al, as long as Al's touching her, Sam can see her, but they say Sam can't read lips.
Right.
And Sam says it would take too long for Al to repeat her and then for him to repeat Al. Now, I think that would have worked out fine. What they do made for better television.
Yes, I agree.
But I don't think that's impossible. We can't repeat it twice.
Well,
I think it would have been fine for them to have to do that.
Well, she talks. Al then has to repeat what she said. And then Sam has to repeat what Al said.
Right.
That whole process might take a lot longer. It would take
a long time, but the court's not going to be like, can you speak faster? They're going to let her testify.
I mean, sure, but at the same time, it might seem less authentic.
Yeah. I mean, obviously this is a better scenario, but they're kind of like, no, we can't do that.
Right.
You could have done that. You still, it still would have given you the opportunity to hear her words.
All right.
So basically he's like, you got 12 hours to figure out how to let me hear Katie.
Well, I mean, the other thing is that they don't need her to give the testimony right then and there. She could give the testimony to Al. Al could have it on like a printout or something like that.
But she has to respond to the specific questions being asked.
Well, yeah, of course.
Not only, by her lawyer, but during the cross-examination as well. You never know what's going to come then. But the other thing here is, didn't we say, every time we've talked about her, we've said Katie was catatonic?
We did say that.
When did she become suddenly, ready to give testimony?
There was also a reference before it was mentioned that she was catatonic, that Katie said that this happened, that she was, in fact, assaulted.
So there was some reference of she came out of it and started talking?
No, this was before they mentioned that she was catatonic, which makes it questionable, how did she even respond to that if they were saying that she was catatonic, which is something I forgot to mention.
Yeah,
earlier.
I was like, did I miss something? Weren't they just telling us the last time we talked about her that she still wasn't speaking?
Right.
And now suddenly our only problem is how do we make it so I can hear her?
Right, yeah.
What happened to, how do we get her to talk? How do we tell her that she's in the future and she has to come stand in this white room to talk to a hologram to testify in court?
All right, so despite these problems...
And is she going to remember this?
Right, yeah. Despite these problems, this is a very effective scene. Sam is called to testify. Katie appears, and she begins to tell her story. Sam repeats it. We eventually cease to hear Sam talking, and we just kind of zoom in on her.
Right.
And hear her talking, which is a very effective choice. I think that was really well
I think
well
it was
done.
Great. So
yeah.
So we eventually, we give up the idea that Sam's repeating everything. We know that's what's happening, but the camera is only focused on Katie and us actually hearing Katie's side of the story. And it's a good place to say who's playing Katie, not only, of course, in the mirror image, but also in the scene where she's actually talking to us.
Right, which is one of the rare times that we actually hear the person from the waiting room.
There's a few, but this is definitely a great example of it. So Katie's played by Cheryl Pollack. She was in an episode of JAG, 1 episode of Early Edition, and 8 episodes of Melrose Place, among other credits, of course. And, before her testimony, we also had this great little moment where Al hadn't came yet.
Yes.
And Sam's like, come on, Al.
Right.
And Nancy's like, who's Al? And Sam covers it up by saying that he's his patron saint of hopeless causes. And Nancy's like, okay, come on, Al. I thought that was a great little comedic moment there as well.
Yes. So we hear her story. We see, hear this harrowing story.
Yeah.
All in all, very effective.
So her story basically is that Kevin took Katie to an expensive dinner. After dinner, he wanted to go for a drive. She wasn't interested. She wanted to be taken right home. So already, after dinner, the drive, she was already saying no. She didn't even want to do that.
Right.
Okay. But instead, he takes her to Fort Cronkite. They parked, they started kissing. She went along with it for a little while, but very quickly tried stopping him. And, of course, he ended up getting very violent with her and forced himself on her. And she ended up stopping resisting because she was literally afraid he was going to kill her. She was afraid for her life.
Right.
And then, when she had the opportunity to, she ran from the car. She says she did not ever fall, because remember he said that she fell and that's how she got these injuries when she ran to some stranger's car. She's saying none of that even happened. She didn't fall. She did not give consent, and 100% from the beginning, it was a no for her.
Right. And despite this story, he's found not guilty. And Nancy, after the fact, reveals that she experienced what Katie did, which is why she was reluctant to take the case in the first place.
Yeah, 12 years ago, this happened to her, and the person was also found not guilty. And
a minor little quibble here. I would have just had her say, well, I got over it, and just leave it at that, and not spell it out for us, because we could, I mean, basically, her saying that she got over it is her telling us that this happened to her as well. And, you know, we don't need to actually spell it out.
Well,
we understand it from that.
Did she get over it, though?
Probably not.
Because she says that that's the whole reason she has such a hard time taking these cases.
Yeah.
Because every time she loses a case, she has to relive that loss all over again.
So, no.
From her case.
So, no, she did not get over it.
But what she did to deal with it is, this is why she became ADA.
Yeah.
Like, this is why she went into law.
Mm-hmm.
Was to try and help the system. And clearly, she feels like, you know, she hasn't helped the system at all.
Right.
Because she doesn't even want to take cases. Because
right.
she's afraid they'll failing. Which sucks.
Yes. That's a crappy position to be in.
It's a crappy position. And I feel like it's discouraging. Where she's like, yeah, the whole reason I went into law is because this happened to me and I want to fight justice. And yeah, her whole character arc is...
She wants to fight justice?
Fight for justice. And her whole character arc is, I don't think we should take the case because we might not win.
That is a rather depressing trajectory for her.
Yeah.
So Shumway basically apologizes to Sam, saying he should not have pushed her to go after him. But Sam says, well, I'm still here, so there must be something else that I'm supposed to be doing.
Right.
And Shumway is impressed by this.
Yeah, but of course we know what that really means.
Right.
Is...
Yeah. And I'm surprised at this point that they're not talking about how Sam failed and how he might be stuck here. That does not come up at all.
I feel like we've already given up on that at this point. I feel like we've already passed the point of failure doesn't mean you don't leave.
Except that we haven't said that exactly. But
haven't we?
I don't think we have.
I don't remember when we first say that.
I don't think it happened yet. Because I think that's something that we'll talk about when it happens. Like, hey, because it's just a changeover to...
Yeah. But I feel like that's insinuated here. Like, he's not saying, oh, I'm stuck here because I failed. He's saying there must be something else for me to do.
So, Al is out on the patio with Sam. He's not sure what he's still doing here. And then all of a sudden, Kevin arrives, gloating. He ends up attacking Sam. Eventually, Sam gets the upper hand.
Punching him in the face, knocking him straight through the gazebo. Like, broke the wood.
The father comes out, the police is called, and Jim is impressed that he managed to defeat Kevin and hurt him so badly. And that's when Sam leaves. And episode over. What did we accomplish here?
Okay, so just to that scene a little bit before we go broader with it.
Okay.
Alad says in this scene that Katie ends up leaving, like, before the fight. Yeah. He says Katie leaves town, never comes back, even for her father's funeral.
Ooh.
So she left. This broke her. She's done with this town. She's done with her family. She's gone bye-bye. And presumably, after this event, after the fight, that doesn't happen anymore. They don't explicitly tell us that.
Not only that, but what happens to Kevin?
Right.
Like, is Kevin charged for this?
For this,
assault? Basically.
Right, for this assault, which isn't as drastic of a charge.
Right.
So even if he is, which he might be because the parents are there to kind of witness the situation.
Yeah.
And know, like, hey, Katie's all beaten up. Like, obviously he hurt her. And obviously what she did to him in this moment was self-defense. But even if he is charged with that, that's a very minor offense compared to what we know he's guilty of. What he confessed to. In this scene. Yet, we know we can't try him for that again.
Right.
Now, what I think would have fixed this is if we got some line about, oh, some other girl came forward. Like, oh, he was charged with this fight. During that, some other girl came forward and accused him of something. And he was found guilty for that.
I mean...
That would have fixed it for me. He needs to pay for the initial... something needs to happen with him.
Right, and
other than being beaten up by a girl.
Right, and we need to specifically say what that is, and
right.
we don't. We just leave it at this and then weep.
Which is why I feel like the entire like conclusion here is don't bother with the justice system because it's going to fail you.
And Sam's entire purpose here was just to beat the crap out of Kevin.
Right,
like that's the entire reason.
Okay, one thing we know is this is going to help Katie.
Mm-hmm.
She's going to have she's going to be able to move on from this.
Right.
After standing up for herself, even though she didn't do it.
But we don't even say any of that.
We don't say any of that. There needed to be more dialogue.
Right,
there,
yeah.
And I think that would have fixed it if we were just told a couple more things about how this is going to snowball into a better situation. But we don't really get it. We just get, he's like, oh, I know what I'm here for. Beat, beat, beat. It reminds me a little bit of Runaway.
Yeah, okay.
Where he's like, oh, what I'm really here for is to, stand up to the sister.
Right.
And what he's here for is to stand up to the abuser. But that's it? Like, that's what you were sent here to do, is to beat this guy up? No, that doesn't make sense.
Like I said, why bother with the trial then? I mean, if you're just going to, fail at the trial, then why bother? Just beat the shit out of Kevin.
Right.
And skip all the, other stuff.
And I just really wish there was, someone else came forward.
Mm.
Somewhere else down the line, he got what was coming to him.
Right. Yeah, that would have been a better ending to this episode. You're right. The ending of this episode is a real problem, for sure. Yeah. So do we have anything else to say?
Well, the good thing is he now leaps into Bobo.
Oh, yeah. So talk about tonal difference between episodes.
We need a light episode after this series of episodes that we have just finished.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Now, the next episode, The Wrong Stuff.
Yeah.
It's got some heavy stuff in there, too. Mm. It's not like this whole light and cheery episode. But I think the seriousness of the episode is completely overshadowed by the ridiculousness of Scott Bakula in a diaper.
Basically.
So I'm excited to go to that one.
Hey, if that's your thing, then I don't blame the ladies. If that's what you want, if that's what gets you off, all right. But,
yeah. And the chimps are really cute, too.
Yeah.
I just kind of, I have fun with that one. I know a lot of people hate it, but I have fun with that episode.
We'll get into this more next week, but it is the episode that, once again, brings into question how much sense does it make for Sam to be leaping around in time in his own body?
Oh, yeah, and we'll have a lot to talk about that.
We absolutely will.
Before we close, I just want to hit what actors we didn't mention yet. Kevin's attorney, the character's name is Brian Chadwick, is played by John Petlock. He was in 18 episodes of Days of Our Lives, 5 episodes of Murder, She Wrote, 7 episodes of The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, among other things.
Cool.
The bailiff is played by Mark Conley. He was in an episode of Babylon 5. He was in an episode of Models, Inc., which was a Melrose Place spinoff. Mm-hmm. And Judge Bowers was played by Aaron Lustig. He was in 1 episode of Grey's Anatomy, an episode of Twisted, which was also in the lineup with Pretty Little Liars. He was in 58 episodes of The Young and the Restless, 33 episodes of The Bold and the Beautiful. Again, lots of soaps around here. He was in an episode of Enterprise.
Oh, okay.
And an episode of Freaky Links.
All right. So, if we ever get to watch that series, we could talk about it a little bit.
And one other person, Kevin's attorney. Oh, wait, did I just do him?
Kevin's attorney.
I did Kevin's attorney twice.
Oh, okay.
So we covered him already.
Okay.
I don't know why he's in my notes twice, but there we go.
All right.
That's everybody.
Okay, so we're done.
We're done.
All right. So we would like to hear from you. If you comment, you can become a part of the conversation. I went into Alpha's comments, Ashley Wright, Mimi Gallick. Thanks for you guys for commenting. But hey, come and be a part of the conversation.
Yeah. Comment about the Katie McBain episode.
Oh, so Ashley Wright actually messaged me.
Okay.
He was suggesting language that we could have used.
Yeah.
And suggested grape as a replacement for a word.
Yeah.
And I didn't really feel like doing that.
So to put a code word like that on it.
Yeah.
I almost feel like that's being offensive to the topic a little bit.
Well,
by making it too gimmicky.
Right. I feel like he said he heard that from somewhere else, but I would feel really silly.
Yeah, exactly. I think we did okay.
Yeah.
Do you guys think we did okay?
I think we
did. Tell
did.
us we did okay, please.
Right. Yeah.
With covering the subject.
We need closure and reassurance. All right.
So leave those comments below and tell us that we're good, and tell us that you're ready to move on to chimps in diapers.
Yes, I am totally ready to move on to that. All right, Stacie, we reached out.
I can reach on Twitter X, Instagram, and Threads, and the Al's Place forums at TVN Coupon Talk.
If you like this video and want to support the channel, there are a number of ways to do so. You can follow me on Twitter at Core Productions. You can join one of my Core Productions Facebook pages. You can buy something from the Core Productions store on Zazzle. You can buy me a coffee. You can join the Core Productions membership for 99 cents a month. And of course, you can like, share, and comment on this video as well as subscribing to our channel. This is Dave and Stacie from Core Productions, signing off.